crops that can stand up to climate change.
Well, let's get talking. Nigeria, the largest economy in Africa, is expected to experience growth in 2024. However, several economic issues could potentially hinder this growth. According to PricewaterhouseCoopers' latest Nigerian Economic Outlook report, the country may witness improved sectoral development, riding on reforms and evolving monetary policy stances to find the right framework and instruments to achieve price stability. But the government must execute its fiscal reforms by balancing its goals with budgetary implementation. Let's talk more around this, and the partner, senior economist at SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje, joins me to continue the discussion on this very important topic. Mr. Alaje, I know it's almost end of January, but this is the first time we're having you on the show this year, so let me say Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, and thank you so very much for having me.
Mr. Alaje, all of the figures I have seen from World Bank, from NESG, from PwC, from IMF, we can go on and on. They're all being re-examined and they're coming up with positives for Nigeria, saying that whatever it is, despite the challenges, fallout of the reforms, Nigeria will still come out strong. How does this come to you?
Well, I must tell you that the growth Nigeria is expected to have will largely depend on the policymakers in Nigeria. Recall that in 2016, the IMF boss, Christine Lagarde, was in Nigeria, I think later in 2015, the first tenure of President Buhari, and told Nigeria would never go into a recession. In fact, Nigeria economy will grow in leaps and bounds. And I had a contrary opinion to say that Nigeria will certainly go into a recession in 2016. Now we all have benefit of hindsight that Nigeria economy went into a recession. I had also projected 13th August 2023 that the exchange rate could get worse. We have seen the result of that prediction happen again. I am not an economic magician. I'm only an economic realist who have taken time to simulate economic realities in our research room, and we have possible answers. And I can tell you that whether Nigeria growth will be positive or negative will be decision we take in 2023. Of course, not taking decision is a decision itself. As I speak to you, if NPR meets an increased rate, is going to have tremendous negative effect, even though increasing rates should not be a wrong thing to do. But if you increase rate when your inflation is already at 28.9%, and we know that it is not because of excess money in circulation that is causing it. I've seen some releases coming from Central Bank saying Nigerians are keeping money at home, and some other reports that Central Bank has pushed. I think this year, more than ever before, starting from the first quarter, if you don't see that convergence happening among monetary authority, fiscal authority, and trade authority, our growth expectation of above 3% that many organizations had mentioned, including World Bank, including PwC, including quite a number of other organizations, may not be a reality. Convergence must play an important role. You know that inflation, when it gets to double digits, can also distort real growth because you have to make provision for inflation, having calculated your nominal growth. The way I look at inflation, definitely we get to 30%, but it's expected to get to a point of deflection around March or around May, between March and May. It's expected that Nigeria inflation figure should come down. But I must say this, it does not mean prices will come down. It means that prices will increase at a reducing rate. It may not be at 29% average price level, but it will certainly increase at a reducing, it will increase, but at a reducing rate. That said, so is it possible for us to achieve 3% GDP growth rate, which many people, including our organization, have said, growth rate is expected to be around 3 to 3.5%. I know an organization is saying 3.7%. I doubt that so very much. But here is my concern. What is happening to oil output? You could see what happened to FX and exchange because we don't have sufficient output, and as a result, are having inflow of FX into the country. So what is going to happen to oil output? Are we going to take decision to secure critical parts of Nigeria, including our oil wells, as well as the lines that we use to export oil to the rest of the world too. Are we going to protect our farms because of what is happening on farms and insecurity that we have in those places? More than ever before, this year growth will largely depend on performance of subnational, the federal, and more importantly, the local government. Policymakers may not have enough time to rest if this growth will become a reality. But is it possible? Yes. Is it visible? It could be, but it's not going to be a walk in the park.
Interesting stuff. I'm also, I throw my weight behind that position that subnationals really have a role to play in all of this. In the speech delivered by the CBN governor at the NESG macroeconomic launch, he specifically said that we expect a drop or fall in the price of petroleum products. That's because we expect Dangote refinery, Port Harcourt refinery, and all of that to start to bridge this gap. You are the economist here. My job is to ask the questions. Do you think this will happen? And if it will happen, how soon will this happen?
Well, from the output we saw from Dangote refinery, what we saw is still energy that does not require much heat, and the reason is very, very obvious. When you are starting, you first need to stabilize before you start producing energy that requires high level of heat, so that the company or the refinery is not overwhelmed at the initial stage. So we're going to be seeing diesel, we're going to be seeing Jet A1, as the case may be, coming out of Dangote refinery. We need to have supply consistently to a point before the exposure we're having to FX reduce. Now, does that mean that there will be no interplay of foreign exchange at all? No, there will still be interplay of foreign exchange as long as Dangote continue to buy each crude, whether in Nigeria or outside Nigeria, and using dollar as a measure, then it's going to definitely play in. But with this reduced, as against what someone has said in a different headquarter, that whether Dangote refinery comes up or not, it will not have any impact on pump price. I don't think that person is correct. I think that person did not really check the numbers very well. I expect the PMS prices to be stable. I think I will be comfortable with the word stable, because economics, especially pricing, is after stability. I expect it to be stable, and I also expect availability to increase. But we may also be sitting on the danger of a monopoly, because Dangote refinery is also working with equipment. If those equipment has an issue, I can bet you the price may sporadically go too high. Now we have Port Harcourt refinery. How soon will it come to mainstream? And with government, for the first time, now allow private sector to run it by giving at least 40 to 60% of the shares of private sector, while government retain the rest. The goal of private sector is output. Why? Because without output, there will be no profit. So it's important to have some level of competition. We can start with, if you like, a duopoly, but the goal eventually should be an oligopolistic market, where we have more persons. I also understand that government has given more licenses to people. In fact, some people have said it is because the first of demand and supply have not fully played in the PMS market. That is why Dangote is not producing petrol as we speak now. Well, I disagree with that argument. I think those persons should do a bit of study, a bit of research, I beg your pardon, on energy economics, and they can see the reasons why this is the issue. So I expect PMS price to come down, but I don't expect that to come down on the immediate. I'm looking at sometimes a beginning of second quarter, or worst case scenario, beginning of fourth quarter. What that means is Nigeria may still need to bear up to this, for a relatively longer time, or short term or a medium term, then we can see some level of stability in PMS. That will help with planning, that will help with output, for consumption and for industry, and that will help with quite a number of other things, rather than living in a volatile economy where we are not sure of what tomorrow may hold or what tomorrow may be.
But see, back to activities of the CBN, we expect the MPC meeting for February, but that's on one side. The CBN has gradually or quietly, I think that would be the right word to use, has been doing all of the sorting out, settling some debts, well, according to them, verifiable debts. of course, in FX, and been allowing some of these companies get their monies to repatriate back to their countries. Now, do you see all of these moves as the needed steps to attract investment into this country? The president keeps saying the country is open for investment. Take it away. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that Mr. Cardoso and his team have to take decision. They have to decide where to go, whether they go to the devil or they jump into the deep blue sea. The decisions are not going to be nice. And I'm sure that Mr. Cardoso and the team understood this even before they accepted the offer given to them by Mr. President. The economy is in a dire state, especially monetary component of the economy requires tough decisions to be made. You will not get fresh investors if the existing investors are finding it difficult to repatriate their fund. Now, here is the elephant in the room. If the existing investor wants to repatriate their fund, we don't even have that sufficient FX. We need to find either through crude receipts or so on and so forth to have the limited amount to share among them. And I see a team that is trying to wrestle the soul of Naira by ensuring that they have stability of some sort. So it's quite a difficult challenge to face. And when that challenge is going on and we are engaging in the contest with saving the soul of Naira, the truth is that other economic activity have to go on. That is why trade policy, I have not seen a clear trade policy that will eventually free Nigeria from economic quagmire, trade policy that will free Naira from being strangulated by the dollars. I've not seen it because eventually central bank cannot print the US dollar. Even printing Naira now is playing with the chest of the devil and say, what can the devil do, in the middle of nowhere? I think we need to allow trade authority to understand that talking trade is beyond speaking to SMEs. It also includes export promotion and export substitution. At the end of the day, the medium to long-term solution to this crisis we are faced will certainly go beyond central bank. Where central bank is finding its footing for stability, Naira may not necessarily go improve in value, but what many economics are after is, can we have stability for planning, for growth, and so on and so forth. So I have seen what the central bank is doing to settle some of the bills, but I can tell you, if there are no confidence by investors that we are inviting, the truth is we might continue to still see roller coaster and uncertain environment around the FX corridor. So confidence is very key. Faith is very key. I'm on this seat talking to you because I have faith that the chair I'm sitting on will not bring me down. So people, to keep their money in Naira, they must have that confidence. They must have that faith that one of the function of money is, one of the characteristics of money is used for store of value, storability. So people must believe that if I keep my money in Naira, at least in the next 5 months, in the next 6 months, in the next 1 year, I will get the same value. It will not significantly be depreciated or emaciate in value. This is what the central bank should also put into consideration. But for them to do this, I tell you, it's going to be a triposis of some sort: the fiscal, the monetary, and the trade authority. In Nigeria, we speak so much of fiscal, and of course, everybody speaks to central bank. The question is, who is speaking to the trade authority? Because we must deliberately encourage plantation for export. We must deliberately encourage manufacturing and production, also for consumption, local consumption, and more importantly, export. If we do that, we have reduced or distorted importation, and we have promoted export out of the country. This is where our liberty lies. This is where our economic miracle, the angel of economic miracle, we are all looking for at subnational and national level, lies in plantation. It lies in manufacturing. That angel also lives where we manufacture. If we don't, I'm afraid the goal of growing Nigeria economy to GDP of 1 trillion naira may not be actualized. At best, maybe if we rebase, as we saw in some years back, we rebase the economy. While we rebase it, we have also rebased poverty, because more people certainly became poor. But we can look at it. How long did it take India from 1999 till date to get to 1 trillion naira economy? Pakistan, how long did it take? Check a number of other countries that are within the size of Nigeria, and the economic capacity has improved significantly. But what must we do if we must increase our capacity as an economy? So key point here is that central bank has a lot of role to play, but beyond central bank having role to play, trade authority, we must make policy in terms of output as a nation that would affect directly what our exchange rate is as we speak today. If we don't, I will just leave that in the air. I tell you that for committing no offense, exchange rates will make a mess of all the efforts of Nigerian people and, more importantly, our government.
It is indeed worrisome. In some cases, we hear it's about 1,400 at the other market. But let's wrap up on this note. Inflation targeting is what the CBN says it will embark on. And we've talked about inflation so many times, Mr. Alaje. In your words, taller than the Cocoa House in Ibadan. Now that we are at this point, and the CBN says we're going to use inflation targeting to address this, where some countries have done it successfully. Do you think that would work for us in this part of the world? In your thoughts, let's wrap up on that note.
Well, it's important to run inflation targeting, but we must also know whether we have the fundamentals, we have the foundation for doing this. And also must say that central bank have limited options. Increasing interest rates right now may also trigger, rather than working to achieve the goal of government, I tell you that it may actually work against it. But they have a few other tools. They have liquidity ratio to play with. They have cash reserve requirement. They have a asymmetric corridor to play with. But they must know that in taking this decision, it's important that those in research department in central bank are first simulated before MPC make an announcement that may trigger further economic crisis. If you reduce rates, that can induce inflation. If you increase rates, what happens to investment? You are going to crowd out jobs. When you crowd out jobs and there is insufficient output in production, it may further lead to scarcity. Scarcity itself may lead to inflation. So before central bank even decide to sit on the fence, it's important to take all of this into cognizance to ensure that all of these have been taken care of before we decide whether we will sit on the fence or we will increase rates or reduce it. But all of this, I tell you, Mr. Yemika Doso and his team, we have to take that decision because it's important to put the number before the screen and run some experiment of some sort before they can come to a final conclusion as to what they will stay with. If not, I tell you, we have seen many policies, in the last 10 years, rather than achieving result, the outcome with which those policies were set to achieve, unfortunately, they were achieving the opposite result. And this is why it's important for us to go beyond economics of textbooks or economics of what is happening on the screen. It's important for us to now go back to the simulation room. I repeat, simulation room, to carry out experiments as economists, then be sure that we will get the desired results before we announce numbers or before we take a decision that will be beneficial to our people.
I must thank you so much. As usual, always an interesting time with you, Mr. Paul Alaje, partner, senior, chief economist now, SPM Professionals. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you a great weekend.
Thank you so much for having me.